Joining now to discuss the state of the race is Dick Howard. He is Distinguished Professor Emeritus at Stony Brook University, as well as the author of several political books in both English and French. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be with you. And
Now,
it's hard to believe that somehow we're going to have still another year this thing going.
it goes fast, though. I promise it goes fast. Now, most U.S. presidents do get reelected, and Trump has a strong economy on his side as well. That said, his approval ratings consistently hover around 40%. Do you think he needs to improve his public standing, or is the base support that elected him last time enough to carry him into another term?
That's a speculative question because it doesn't depend so much on popular opinion. It depends in good part on the Electoral College. You'll remember that in 2016, his margins of victory in three crucial states were less than 100,000 votes. So the base could suffice if the base is located in strategic states. For example, is it surprising, after all, that Mr. Trump has just announced that he's changing his legal residence to Florida from New York? New York being a solidly Democratic state, Florida being a large state, which is still in play.
A very important state that often downright determines who the president will be, as we saw with Bush v. Gore. Now, for voters who maybe aren't as familiar with the Electoral College, each state votes has a certain number associated with how many voters live there. And the race really comes down to these dozen or so states, which include Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Do you think that Trump's support is holding up in these areas?
It doesn't seem to be. It seems that there has not been the increase in employment that he had been counting on, and that the effects of the tax cuts that he introduced in 2017 are not being sufficiently felt. And we could add one other thing to this, which is interesting. You defined the Electoral College in terms of population. It's actually defined by both population and the fact that each state gets two votes because they correspond to their number of senators. So a state with, let's say, 900,000 people like Montana will have three electoral votes because of that shift. And that's where the possibility of the Trump winning the Electoral College begins to be felt.
And that gives some less populated states more power. I want to switch quickly to the Democrats. Now, the only candidate to really measurably grow support has been Senator Elisabeth Warren, who now leads in some polls. Do you see her as a candidate who can combine and integrate the support of other candidates as the field continues to dwindle?
It seems to me that she's going to have problems for two reasons. On the one hand, she represents the furthest left. You'll notice I'm going to my left, not your left. She represents the furthest position to the left among the potential candidates. And secondly, she's only recently become a politician. Remember, she was a Harvard Law School professor. And because she's only recently gone into politics, she doesn't really have a base within the party. And the danger is going to be that she can win the primary, but she won't have sufficient support in what's called the turnout for the election itself, and consequently that the Democrats would be disadvantaged. By the way, I might mention that the person who also has been gaining is this young mayor from Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, who seems to have become a favorite of the middle of the road people, insofar as Joe Biden, to some people at least, is showing the effects of his age. So Buttigieg would become the candidate of the middle. However, Buttigieg, when we started, he'd never been more than the mayor of 100,000 people, 120,000 people. He hasn't got national experience, and he hasn't been really exposed to the press until now. So I suspect that he is going to rise a bit more. He's getting good financing, for example, from Silicon Valley, among other places, but that his rise will get stopped somewhere around 8, 10%, 12%. And then the press will get a hold of him and start asking questions, and we'll see that he has feet of clay and he has no backing, so far as one can tell, and no experience with the black community.
That's correct. We are seeing him doing well in the oh so important state of Iowa, however. Dick Howard, really appreciate your time and joining the program.